All right, let me make sure this is working right.
I hear you.
All right, it's working. Cool. So I wanted to kind of revisit SPY real quick, and then I want to go through the typical humdrum of MSNBC and see if we can pick off a couple swings. I know that towards the end of this week, we're going to start seeing some swing trade setups. This being Wednesday, we're not quite sure yet, but we got a couple things that are promising, and I'll get into those in a few minutes here. Um, Wanted to take a couple notes on SPY, and there's a couple of places where we could go today. Let me line this up just a little bit here. So there's a pretty good chance of visiting the top of this liquidity zone down here at about 449. And if it breaks that, 448 to 445 could be a good A to B through that liquidity. And more or less, it's a mean reversion. So we got this trend here. That'd be about split in the middle of it in that area. So that is possible. We could get that kind of pullback. If it holds support here, we could certainly spring back up into the channel. And then that would give us a target up here at about 452 to 452.50. So kind of stay spry in today's mess because things can accumulate and then reverse really quickly. So we could very easily open up pretty high tomorrow. If you kind of look left, you can see we've been there, done that. So essentially, if we get back into a little bit of a bull mode, if this whole thing with the America's FICO score being reduced and all that happy crap kind of plays off for a bounce or blows over, we could open up as high as 454, 453.50, but it's not very likely this time. Just kind of take that with a grain of salt. Let's look a little further left onto the daily chart. And we know that we have this pretty parabolic trend here behind us, and we could easily have some problems here and start to fade through these areas for mean revision of this entire leg here. And boy, that'd be upsetting for a lot of people. But you know what? We just trade it as it comes. So just kind of be spry in this area. We could very quickly make a pullback. We could make a full mean reversion. Who knows? But in the meantime, we've got this area that's kind of supporting us around that 448 to 448.50. So let's see what happens. All right, let me get old Jimbo's list out here. So a couple things I wanted to visit at the bottom of his list. He goes over SoFi, Affirm, and Upstart. Let me get into that real quick here. And you can see I've had lots of dope on SoFi. I damn near met my bull target in that 1-for-1 mix up there. But now we're looking like we're going to get kind of a reversion back to this liquidity zone right here. Well, we pretty much got it. So we can A to B that and maybe find support here and maybe get one more bounce out of it. If we can't hold this area, we've got this liquidity zone down here, which is kind of critical to know that if that is the case, that becomes a pretty quick bearish 1-for-1 right down to that support level. So if you're long SoFi, be very cautious. If you're short SoFi, be kind of ready to take profit if you see it get back above that 2-hour 8 period too much. So far, it's been a pretty good little short trade. And this will either settle out to be a little reversal in this area or a bear flag. So probably by tomorrow, you'll have your answer. Generally speaking, the club, as it's called over there at CNBC, they're a bit bullish on this. They're saying that, among all the banks that were having problems not so long ago, these guys and a few others were the only ones able to open new accounts. That's kind of silly. I don't know about that. Looking at this in comparison to Affirm, for instance, is kind of a conundrum. So Affirm on your daily chart, you got this big old double top that can't be ignored, and it's right at a key resistance level. Knowing that, you look further left, we've got quite the trend. We can kind of, do a mean revision in here. So anybody's guess on Affirm, but if I was to be speculatively long on something, I'd wait for this to settle around 16 bucks and see if we can, get some fuel or run for that mean reversion because we haven't met that yet. And that would put us, right in about this area. Can you imagine? That's pretty psycho. So we've got a few levels to get through before we even approach a trend like that. But this is something where I would be considering running some options trades that would take advantage of a channel here. And if this is going to be, in a range between like $9 and $18, why not? Wouldn't say wheel trading it with equity would be worthwhile, but maybe a synthetic long with calendar shorts would be kind of cool. Um, Taking a note that this is kind of a rounding bottom, so it can hold support right around $13, $14 and stay in the upper range and eventually build momentum to swing out of this back to the previous high, maybe $38. Okay, probably not as likely. 27 would be a little more ideal. So I can say that I can stay neutral on this until it breaks one way or another. So like I said, later this week, we're going to see some answers on what's available for decent swing trades. And this is kind of on something I'm watching. In the short term, looking at the 2 hour, we've pretty much more or less made a 1-for-1 out of this bottom here. Now we're back to the mean. If it can hold, say, $17, I might have some faith in it to go back into a long position, but I'm not so sure yet because we could still, tip over here to about 15.70. Who knows? But like I said, this is going to be the week to kind of watch things, and you'll start to see either you get into at least a channel where you can trade the swings, or you can start trading momentum from this week on. I don't know why this week is so special. It just kind of seems that a lot of equities are falling into this week is going to be a deal, no deal type of week. And then going on to the bottom of the list, Upstart was the last one he mentioned here. Let's see here, UPST. That's a beast. That is one hell of a beast. And, we have this huge downtrend. We've got the rounding bottom. And like I was talking about, the last one we just looked at here, Affirm, that's kind of a similar scenario. It can really do that. But here we have a control candle. This is a weekly control candle. So let's set a couple pivots in here. That would be about my target, about $81 and some change. Just to kind of make note of where that candle is. Maybe say $80 would be better, 80 and a half. Typically, you'll get these kind of movements. They're easy to see. There's a nice clean 1-for-1 measured move. Has pretty much peaked, but it can go a little higher. But if things get really interesting for this particular equity, we could see it revert all the way up here. And, 137, 138 could be a pretty lofty target, but not out of reach if it starts to get past this resistance zone. So effectively keep an eye on this thing. This week we might have an answer on this one as well. And pardon my phone and all the background noise going crazy. I need to get
Can't
myself
even
an
hear it.
office. On the Discord channel you can't, but on YouTube you certainly can. my noise filter doesn't always work that well. So anyway, looking at the 2 hour, we've got this whole move here. This has been one hell of a trend. I'd love to see this pull back a little, but you know what? Sometimes things can just keep on running away. But that 80-50, it's not much higher from here. It can do it. So this is definitely one that I'm going to watch for a momentum trade. I'd love to see it pull back a little bit more, like I said, before I go long on it. But this would be my choice for the best out of the three mentioned for, your kind of fintech stuff. And look at that gap, by the way. Pretty sweet. So this would be the best one to look at for those. Now, they also mentioned that they're, a little bit disappointed with the big banks. So let's look at like Wells Fargo and a couple others here. And Wells Fargo has always kind of been the speculative one, and they've been kind of the focus of trouble where they started opening up accounts for everybody meeting quotas, middle management meddling, whatever. Doesn't really matter. There's still a big bank. There's still a lot of money to be had here. So you can clearly see nice 1-for-1 measured move complete. I'd love to see this make a mean reversion right back down to here. And about $43.50 to $43 would be a good bear target for this guy. and it certainly kind of broke over, looking like it'll finish that move. Watch for accumulation into tomorrow and maybe a continuation into that short position by Friday. Okay. Also looking at the 2-hour 200 period, we're kind of at an area where I would expect it to maybe have a little bit more consolidation here at around the 44.50 to 44.90 area, maybe through tomorrow, and then probably Friday we'll run back down here. So Wells Fargo is a little bit bearish. Okay, I can see them throwing shade at the big banks. Morgan Stanley, on the other hand, I don't know about that. That's a nice reversion already done. We're at about $89 today. We tapped 88 and some change earlier today. We could see this one start to shake into a bull trend, but let's look further left. We've got previous highs. We've got basically a big channel line here, and I can say that there's a division line right in here that can be noted. I'm going to start it in the middle of nowhere, but you know where it comes from. So I've kind of split the difference between the angular high, the angular low. We've got kind of a bull target. It looks like, $100 would be reasonable after this pullback. We'll see where it goes first. So again, this will be, let's wait and see what happens by the end of the week, and we'll see if we can get a good swing trade set up. And I will be back on Friday doing this exact thing, and I'll revisit these for sure. Moving on with the list here, let's go into Goldman Sachs and JPM real quick, and then we'll get into a couple other things I want to look at. And good old Goldman Sachs, man, that does not disappoint for price action. Here we have the makings of a possible weekly 3-bar. Ooh, can you see that at 330? Man, that'd be cool. The other scenario is we make a mean reversion of this big bad boy here, come down to about 340 and maybe get long on it again. Who knows? Knowing Goldman Sachs, they're pretty good at making money. I mean, all you got to do is look left and say, yeah, they've been at it for a while. Usually these pullbacks tend to bounce, but here we're in an area where it can capitalize a little bit down to 340 and continue on. If it gets down to 330, that's a little bit of trouble here, but these evening star patterns are pretty regular on the weekly chart for this particular equity, and usually they bounce right around that base, so we'll see. In the meantime, this is going to be kind of a support zone more than a support pivot, so watch that 340 area, down to about 335-ish in that area. If it can bounce there, cool, we can go long. If not, well, we can ignore it and move on to the better trade setups. Last but not least, there was JPM. 1 for 1, damn near complete. I've got some old dope here. This was a channel that I drew a while back, and sometimes it gets skewed when I look at them on a weekly chart. There you go. That's what it looks like. So at any rate, this beautiful 1 for 1 measured move is complete right after a diamond to boot. I'd love to see this pull back to about 149, 150, and we'll see if we can continue higher. Again, kind of the same scenario. The big banks kind of know what they're doing, and this is certainly one of them. JP Morgan loves making money. So kind of keep an eye on the big banks for the remainder of this week, see where we're at. Again, you realize that our credit rating was diminished, so of course we're going to see some bearishness. Just by comparison, I tend to build a hedge on situations like this where I'll go and sell some credit spreads that are kind of at the money on UUP because it's been kind of gappy on this rise. Sure, it can pull back to like $28, and definitely if the market flips on me, if the dollar comes down, equities will go up. Makes a fine hedge to be in a credit spread at the money on this, just in case. Things can happen really fast. UUP doesn't move very much very fast, but when it does, you get a pretty good return on credit spreads if you know what you're doing. Moving on to the last couple things I want to talk about here. Everybody knows about the yellow trucking company shutting the doors. It's a big old short squeeze. I'll get into that real quick here. Why not? That's massive. Look for mean reversion, about $2.15 would be ideal. I'm currently running a little short on it. I have friends who have shorted lots of shares here at like 440 to 480, and they're doing great. They're probably closing their positions today. We've basically met about half that entire move here with this wick here today at about 250, so 254. So kind of be cautious if you're still shorting this. I do know that the options chain is like ridiculously overpriced for puts on this thing. Like a dollar put trading at 25 cents, dude. That's ridiculous, and it's like not even a month out. Don't fall for that trap. Spreads aren't even worth it in this thing. But if you want to short some shares, I would probably consider taking my profit because you never know. These meme stocks, people pour money in them for silliness, but in reality, they never look left. Looking at this whole thing, I mean, it came right back to a known target. The weekly 200 period just nailed it, wicked off. I'm almost certain this will sell back down to like 80 cents a share before long. But in the meantime, the options are just stupidly overpriced. I wouldn't really go chasing this thing either direction, but you can certainly scalp it. And yesterday we had a tremendous scalp on that thing. We were able to see that we were likely to break out above that 217 area, and we sure as heck did. Um, I put in a couple of quick scalps on that yesterday and did very well with it, but that doesn't mean that you should go chasing it around now because it's more or less bearish at this point. It's seen its peak. Look for major pullbacks. If it starts to break around that $2 level, sure, it can run back down to $1. You could get a nice clean 1-for-1 out of this and see it at about a buck 15. Just be careful. These things tend to just blow up on you, and if you're not careful with the short position, your risk is infinite. So definitely be mindful of that. All right, last couple things to look at. I'm gonna go with where was that list? A couple of the airlines. Where did they go? I know JetBlue was one of them. I just don't remember the ticker. There it is, JBLU. All right, JetBlue kind of at the bottom of a big old pullback here. I know the company is not doing so hot. Nice, clean, bearish 1-for-1. We're accumulating here. This will be either a bear flag or a channel to reverse. Critical support about 670 on this bad boy. I wouldn't quite go long here. Travel season is kind of ticking off for the summer travels. You got about 3-4 weeks before kids go back to school. Then you start looking at the winter traveling, Thanksgiving and Christmas, and maybe we can make an uptick and maybe visit the 1320 area for kind of a mean reversion here. Back into that previous trend. Revisit the middle of that 1-for-1. I just don't like this because it also kind of looks a little like a bear flag. And my gosh, if that goes one step lower, we're looking at like $1.20 to $1.50. That'd be a hell of a drop. So be cautious if you're going to try to go long or short on this, but you got to know that it's going to break this channel. It's going to break at some point. We're kind of already at the end of it. So if it can't find support here, sure, it can go lower. But if it bounces here, at least it'll go up and visit the channel. Might get some good day trades and swing trades out of this as the coming week goes by. Looking at American Airlines, I kind of like that one a little better. We got a nice little rounding bottom here. We got a start of a trend. We've made a nice clean 1-for-1. We've got kind of a mean revision already met. We've got some old dope on here that's kind of outdated, but not lost. It's right at a key level. So 1-for-1's done. Mean reversion's done. We could see this either bounce or come back to the bottom of the channel. So certainly look for a swing trade to open up on this probably by the end of the week. We might even see something that we could go take a quick long scalp for kind of the old adage of the dead cat bounce after this low here. It's kind of looking like it could maybe come back to like 16.25 to $17 maybe. We'll see what happens. Um, Last but not least, there was Delta Airlines. Kind of the same scenario. We've made a really bullish one for one. However, we haven't met the mean reversion yet, and 4240 is looking like a pretty solid bear target for this thing. So, like I said, as the summer travel season kind of kicks down lower, we'll see something happen here. There's one more I wanted to look at, and it kind of goes two sides. So SOX, SO, there it is, SOXL. So looking at the semiconductors leveraged bull ETFs, kind of are a depreciating asset, but we've kind of made an interesting move here. We've come back to a key known area. Not quite a mean reversion of this trend, but we're in an area where you might get a quick scalp on a range trade. So let's see what we got on the daily. Looking like there is your primary move. We're accumulated. We're fully ready to go. We may go right back up to this 29 area, which would be a quick scalp for a swing trade. Just be careful because this also looks like a topping pattern, like we could come down and visit about $20.40. So overnight scalps, you might get pretty interested in this today or tomorrow. Just be aware that it can go either way. So this is something I'm looking at for a quick condor. And being a leveraged ETF, the options are a bit expensive. So I'm looking to flip a condor into butterflies and try to ride this a little longer. I want to see if this range is going to hold or if it's going to break over and revisit some of these lows. Either way, if I'm starting from a neutral position, I'll take advantage of the bigger move. I just have to be at the correct strike level. So looking at like $17, $18 strikes, they're a little expensive a month out. And I'm kind of looking for the happy medium to get me in my risk to reward happy zone. So knowing that it is also a depreciating asset, it is triple leveraged ETF, you kind of got to wonder what's the reciprocate. SOXS doesn't really do much, but it takes wild little swings. So this is probably your best bet, looking to take advantage of the volatility in the semiconductor industry. And I've traded this before, and typically I'll find a spike like this and go for the bearish trade on that. That's really going to depend on what I see NVIDIA do over the next couple of days, because we had one heck of a pullback on NVIDIA today, as we may have seen. And I love shorting these depreciating assets, these leveraged ETFs, but I've just got to be a little cautious. So I could maybe take and instead of running a condor, just put debit spreads on both of them and see which one shakes out first. Kind of a conundrum. Not my favorite thing to options trade, but I kind of keep an eye on it when it comes to semiconductors because these leveraged ETFs make exaggerated movement. And when I can see exaggerated movements on those indexes, I can usually find some decent swing trades on some electronic stuff. And that's where I start looking at AMD, and I'll occasionally look at NVIDIA was one of them. And then the other one I kind of look at is Intel Corp. And I'll get into that in a second. But AMD's kind of made a nice move to a critical support area around 108.50. If it can hold here, cool. If not, we got a quick bearish one for one right down to $100. So that'd be pretty sweet. And it's kind of set up to where it might just do it. So look at the big candles here. We got some selling off happening. We know this critical liquidity zone, it just blasted right through all that today. We could see this continue on, finish accumulation by tomorrow, and if we break 108.50, we could certainly see it start heading for that $100 bill. Might get a nice little short on AMD. Looking at Intel Corporation, kind of the same way. You guys may have been around for my bullish trade. It never quite made that 2-for-1, but boy, it made it right to the middle of it. I did very well. My spreads were 36, 38s, and I killed it. Now I'm kind of chilling because I see this massive double top, and I'm looking at key support here where we could easily revisit the previous analyst target of 32 bucks. So we look for a quick accumulation over today and tomorrow, and we could see a nice bear flag break, but we've already made a 2-hour 1-for-1 bear move, and we've already kind of revisited the support area. So this could actually go either way, but if we break key support here, pretty easy move to 32 bucks. So looking a little bearish for semiconductors and some of the larger companies that make them. I would say that you got 4 ways to trade it. You can go SOXL, SOXS, or you can go directly to the equities and trade them any way you want. Whatever is going to have the best risk to reward ratio in the options chain, that's what I'm going to be looking for. So I'm going to be digging through those options chains today, and I'll see if I can find anything I can put in the announcements. It's going to about do it for me today. Um, Looking forward to Friday. I think that's going to be the better day to find your best swing trade setups. And if you want to do some scalping overnight for some of this bearishness, it's certainly on the table. But just be careful because these things tend to bounce really quick when they do. Thanks again for joining me. I'll see you guys on Friday.
Take care.
You too. And you guys, I'll see you tomorrow. But everyone else for YouTube and for the kick, I'll see you on Friday.